Okay, so today we're going to be going over web to lead. There are a couple of things that I wanted to go over real quick. First off is how to get to the web to lead functionality. So if we click on setup, we get brought to this menu here. And up on the top left hand corner we have the admin search bar. And if we start typing in web to lead, we have leads and self-service. So the web to lead functionality is to basically have leads imported from your website into Salesforce automatically. You can do the exact same thing with cases. So a good use case for this is maybe customers that are trying to submit a concern or a problem. You can have those cases automatically created so that your customer service team can address those immediately. But today we're specifically going to be focusing on leads, but understand that everything we go over will be the exact same for web to case. Let's go ahead and hop into web to lead. There are a few settings that I want to go over real quick. The web to lead, the default lead creator, and the default response template. So the web to lead enabled obviously is allowing, you're essentially turning on the web to lead functionality in your Salesforce organization. So you need to make sure that is checked, because if it's not checked, it's not going to work. Default lead creator is actually a very important part of this. It's a very important feature. So the default lead creator is going to be the person or queue that any lead that is not assigned to someone will default to. It's really important that you have this set up, because if you don't, there's always the possibility of losing a lead. So for example, a lot of people will use assign leads based on region. So if you're coming from the Northwest, then you get assigned to the Northwest sales team. Or if you're coming from the Southeast, you get assigned to the Southeast sales team. And if for whatever reason it doesn't get assigned to one of those default categories, without that default lead creator, it's assigned to no one and has a potential of being lost in the system. The default response template, let's go ahead and hit edit. The default response template is a templated email that is sent to the person that submits the lead. So if you are filling stuff out and you enter your email address as you're filling it out to submit yourself as a lead on a website, when you hit send and it gets pulled into Salesforce, you can use that email address to send them an automated response. Usually it's something like, "Thank you so much for signing up. One of our sales reps will be contacting you shortly," something along those lines. So, and as you can see here, it's just a lookup, standard lookup that'll take you to the email templates that you have available. All right, so let's go ahead. It's a little bit not off topic, but it's not directly related. It's not directly talking about web to leads, but it's very strongly related. I want to talk a little bit about queues. So something that's it can be an extremely useful tool if used well is Salesforce's queue system. They're available for both leads and for cases. Essentially what happens is when a lead is submitted, you can assign that lead to a queue instead of to an individual person. So maybe instead of having one sales rep working all of the Northwest, you have an entire team that's working all of the Northwest. And you don't necessarily want to assign it to a single person, because based on that person's load, they may or may not be able to reach out to that person quick enough. And so what you do is you create a queue. This can also be found in the search setup. So it's under Manage Users, Queues. So if we hop in here real quick, we can create a new queue, and you assign it a label and a name, and then there can be a queue email, and then you select the objects you want to assign to this queue. And then the important thing really is the queue members. So we would come down here and we would add all of the users that we want to that are in that specific sales team. We also have public groups. So that's really would be the ideal way to set up a queue. You would set up a Northwest group, and that would be your Northwest sales team. And you'd set up a Southwest group, and that would be your Southwest sales team, and so on and so forth. By setting up these groups, you can just select that group. I don't have any groups set up because this is a demo org, but there's an all internal users, which is a default group that Salesforce provides. But you could have, your Northwest group, your Southwest, Northeast, Southeast, and you could select that group and move it over. And obviously, you're going to be selecting the lead object because that's what's being sent into this queue. And you would hit save. And when you hit save, it'll take you to like a it would save the queue, and then on your lead, when you're submitting that web to lead, you can set up what's called assignment rules to assign that lead to a certain person or queue. Let's go over that real quick. So we can see here we have lead and case assignment rules, but today we're focusing on leads. Just remember, it's going to be the exact same process for both. So if we hop into assignment leads, we can see I created a web to lead assignment rule real quick. It's a very simple process. You just type in the rule name and hit save. So once you have the web to lead or whatever assignment rule you want set up, you click on this rule, and this is the page that you're brought to. The edit is only going to appear. It's only really going to allow you to set it as active or change the name. What we're really interested in are these different rule entries. These rule entries are essentially criteria. So if we go ahead and hit new, I can show you what that means. So basically what we're doing here is we are defining, okay, if this criteria is met, you need to assign this lead that is being imported to a certain user or a certain queue. So for example, if you had the 4 sales regions, you would maybe do it by zip code. And you could say if the zip code submitted is in this area, is one of these defined zip codes, then we're going to assign it to a queue. And then you can search here through the queues, and I don't have any set up at this time because, again, this is just a demo account, but you would search for, let's say, the Northwest, and you would search for that queue, and then select that queue, and then when the assignment comes in and it matches one of those zip codes, it assigns it to that queue. Now the sort order is also kind of important. All of these rules are going to be executed in a specific order that you define. So for example, it may not necessarily matter when you're doing something like regions, but every once in a while you have the use case where you need a lead to be assigned to a certain queue before it gets assigned to another one. So as it goes through and executes and goes through this order of operations, if something is sort order 1, it's going to check that before it checks sort order 2. So as you just go ahead and create these rule entries, you'll be creating 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Most of the time it's not really going to matter because all the queues are going to be different, but every once in a while, like I said, you run into that use case where order of operations is going to be important. So to review what we've gone over really quick so far, we went over how to get into the web to lead settings, how to set those up so that web to lead is enabled, and set up that default assignment or the default web to lead person that the web to leads are going to be assigned to in case one of these assignment rules doesn't work. And we've also briefly gone over queues and kind of what their use case is and how they can be useful. So now that we've gone over, we've kind of laid a foundation, let's jump into the actual web to lead part. So let's go back up to web to lead. And let's go ahead and create a web to lead form. And they have simplified this as much as they possibly could have. It's really pretty neat. So what we do here on the left side are all the fields that are available on your lead object. And so you can go through and you can select any of these fields, and just kind of like any other multi-select pick list, you can select what you want. And if you want to select more than one, you can hit down the control button on your keyboard, and that'll allow you to select more than one. You can also hit the Shift key and hit select everything in between your first and second click. So if I hit salutation, I hold down the Shift key and hit address, it's going to select everything in between. And then I can hit add, and it will add all of those fields. The return URL is where you want the customer to be directed after they submit their form. So let's say they come in, they're interested in whatever it is you're offering, they fill out the form, they hit submit. Do you want them to go back to a home page? Do you want them to go to a thank you page? This is where that is defined. And so you can put in anything you want. And we'll go ahead and hit generate. And it spits out the HTML that is necessary for the web to lead form. Now, to most people, this is not going to be that important. Because to most Salesforce admins, this isn't that important because all you have to do is give this to your web guy, your IT department, whoever's in charge of the website, and they're going to be the ones that go through this and take care of it and do what they need to do. But we're going to go over this real quick. Let me open up a text editor. Okay, so let's open up WordPad real quick. Let's paste this in here. Sorry, I'm using somebody else's computer, and I actually don't like WordPad. And I usually use Sublime, but it's not on this computer. So I'm going to use the actual Notepad, not any Microsoft Word product. So if we can see here, this is the HTML code, and this is basically what the internet uses to render a web page. And this is what your webmaster is going to go, and using CSS, they would design this and style this to however they want it to be designed or styled. The second part, and essentially as an admin, if you're strictly an admin, your job ends here. You've done everything you need to do to set up web to lead. You take this, you would save this notepad file, and you would send it over to your web guys, your IT department. Now, when you're saving this, your IT department will be grateful if you use something like Notepad as opposed to using Microsoft Word. The reason being, Microsoft Word automatically tries to format things. And so if I actually open up this again, I'll open up Microsoft Word real quick just so you can see what I'm talking about. If I paste that in here, notice it's automatically adding spaces and page breaks and things like that, and it's not formatted the way an IT guy would want. But Notepad doesn't apply any of those automatic formatting rules. It's just the plain text, which is what anybody in IT is actually going to need. So you'd save this and you'd send it over, and now you can kind of wipe your hands clean of this. You have done everything that you need to do as an admin to set up your web to lead. What I want to jump into now is a little bit of URL hacking. This is essentially going to allow you to get around some of Salesforce's API limits. So the nice thing about Web to Lead is it's available in all of the Salesforce license editions. However, API is not. And if you want to be able to send leads into Salesforce without having to create a full-blown API endpoint, you can actually use Web to Lead and a little bit of URL hacking to get that done. So what we can do here is if we look at the Web to Lead, at the HTML here, this actually contains all the information we need to build a URL that will insert all of the information that we need to Salesforce and create that lead for us. So let's actually, I'm gonna save this real quick as an HTML file. So, and if I open that up, let's see here. So this is what we see with a plain HTML, and we can see it's just a simple form. And if we fill this out, Nick Mortensen, asdf@gmail.com. Let's just go ahead and fill this out real quick, Mr. And we can put in a phone number here and an address, 1234 East. And let's go ahead and submit this. And now if we go back here and we open up our contacts, or I'm sorry, our leads. Let's go to today's leads. We can see that Mortensen Nick, the lead that I just submitted, is already in Salesforce with all the information I entered. So that's pretty cool. And I'm going to show you here how to actually kind of hack that so you can avoid the API stuff, and without using API still be able to import leads into your system. So this right here is what's called the base URL. This is kind of what it's going to be this essentially the same for all of your Salesforce users. So I'm going to copy this, create a new notepad document, and paste that here. Apparently you can only have one notepad open at a time. Okay, hold on one second. Let's go ahead, let's just do this. Okay, so if we notice here this is the HTML, this is what we copied and pasted out of the notepad originally. And there's a couple of things that I want to point out here, and this is OID. And OID it stands for Organization ID, and that's going to tell you essentially what organization or what Salesforce org to post this information to. So when we are URL hacking, in between we use what's called parameters, and parameters exist in key value pairs. And a key value pair it's a key and a value. The key would be in Salesforce, it's the name of the field in Salesforce, and the value is the value you want to insert. So let's go ahead. When you're inserting parameters, you actually use an ampersand. So we use an ampersand OID equals. We come back here and we can take this value, copy it, and we can paste it here. So now when this is sent to Salesforce, Salesforce's web servers look through this and say, okay, this is, as we can see here, this is a web to lead, and this is it's a post to our server, and what we need to do is look for any organization where the ID is equal to this value here. And we can add as many values as we want here as long as we add an ampersand in between. So if we come back, we can do first name. So this right here, the ID is first name. So if I copy this and paste here, first name equals, let's do another name, Steph. So now we have a URL that's going to go to Salesforce and say, okay, in this organization we need to create a lead where the first name is equal to this. So let's go ahead and post this and see what happens. So we're just going to paste this here in the URL bar and hit enter. Alright, and notice it's not going to redirect us to anywhere because we didn't put the redirect parameter in here. But if we come back to leads and we go to today's leads list view, we have Steph here as a lead. And the first name Steph, we didn't provide the last name. So we can see here that this information can be sent without using the API. So where this would come in handy, why you would want to do a web to lead hack. Let's say you have something built already in your, you have a website already built out that's capturing the information. Well, instead of having to use this form, you can use the form that you've already built and just set it up so that your web guy would know how to do this, but you would just essentially put this URL in, and you would take everything that is inserted in these forms, append it to the end of this URL using the ampersand and the key value pairs for each parameter, and then you would post it. You would submit that, and then those leads could be sent in. Another good use case is maybe you have a different system that's capturing leads. Maybe for whatever reason you're not using Salesforce, you have a third-party application that's being used, you're capturing the leads and all that information, but you want to move it to Salesforce. There's one of two ways to do it. You can do it this way, or you can use the API. The API, you need API enabled, so you have to have a higher license and you have to pay for the API functionality. In addition, you actually have to build out an endpoint in Salesforce. You need somebody who knows how to code in Apex to build out an endpoint to receive the lead in either XML or JSON, one of the standard API formats. And then you need to parse through that information, create a new lead, push that information to the new lead, and then save it. The nice thing is Salesforce has already built that endpoint, and that's what the web to lead is. So in order to take advantage of that, something that's already been built, all you have to do is know how to do this little URL hack, and you can take advantage of it that way. So that was really all I had planned for the presentation today, and I'm sure there's going to be some questions, so I'm going to go ahead and unmute you guys, and you can ask any questions if you have any. Okay, so are there any questions at this point? No questions. It doesn't sound like it. Okay. Well, I'd like to thank all of you guys for participating in the webinar today. And if you do have any other questions up to this point, feel free to email us or contact us on our website, kyazmallc.com, and we'd be more than happy to take care of you. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.